Just for the record.
Juste pour info.
আমরা তোমাদেরকে জানাতে চাই
Solo para que conste.
Just for the record.
Just for the record.
Just for the record.
Okay.
Just for the record.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Just for the Record. I, Sol, am both a writer as well as the cultural editor for the Record News. And this is going to be our first rendition of Culture Collision. This segment will generally be about, tackling the culture, obviously, and that's going to involve a fair amount of arts, I would say, and just a lot of events in general that are happening around Buffalo. For our first guests, we have with us the cast of Little Shop of Horrors. I think this would be very perfect to do this because for the previous casting hall shows, I've been doing interviews with them, so why not have them be here and give us that magic? So let's get into it.
Hello, I'm Anne Gerace. I play Audrey.
Hello, I'm Jaden Maury, and I play Mushnik.
Hi, my name is Sierra Munt, and I am ensemble and crew.
All right, hello, everybody. And just before we get into, a little bit deeper in episodes, we have a very, notable show, right? Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, yeah.
Some, may have heard of it, but just in case some people have not, what exactly is the show?
Well, the show is about a little shop in rundown Skid Row in a kind of vague urban area that's supposed to be pretty New York City-ish. It's a little plant shop, and we follow Seymour, who's kind of a downtrodden guy living the low life. And he finds a mysterious plant one day that really shakes things up. It's a very talented cast and crew I think we've collected that's doing the show very well.
To sort of touch on that with the cast and everything, just before this production, what was sort of your familiarity with the show? Did you get a chance to maybe see it before, or maybe been part of a production of the show?
I was very aware of the film adaptation, but I had actually seen a local performance at Ken West just a few years back when they did this production.
Yeah, I'd heard of the Rick Moranis 80s movie, and I knew of the big cultural beats, Big Man-Eating Plant. I'd heard all the big hits, like Suddenly Seymour and Somewhere That's Green, and Get It, of course. But I'd never actually watched the movie all the way through or seen an actual stage production. I just knew the big songs that everyone, I think, knows and the story beats.
Believe it or not, I've actually never watched the movie or seen a stage production of this movie prior to auditioning. And I never heard any of the songs.
Oh my gosh.
So everything was a big surprise to me. All I knew is that it was themed around plants. And I was like, well, I like plants. So I watched the movie, and it was really good, and I'm so happy to be a part of this production.
Yeah, to get into with the experience with this production yourselves and the journey and everything, how did that start off in the beginning?
Well, we had auditions back it was November, right? At the end of November, and we had callbacks. And we started some light music rehearsals back in December after everyone is cast, right before the winter break and the beginning of the spring semester. And that was actually a really good icebreaker for all of us. We're a very close-knit cast now. I think I consider everyone family at this point, which is a very corny kind of general statement you usually hear from people, but it's really true. And it helped build up our confidence, because this is really hard music. And we've been going at it for months now, and I think we couldn't be any more confident and secure in where we are.
Our amazing and talented director, Bobby Cook, and assistant director, Jake Greer, and music director, Kathleen Dunn. All are just such great people, and they really worked us very hard. They, of course, we were kikiing a lot in the rehearsals, but when business came down to business, we were getting the business. We were standing on it, and we were stomping on it, and we were making sure that everything for the show was as good as it possibly could be, even better than that, 120%. And I think we're ready because of them and their hard work and their drive to make us as best as we can be.
We are miles ahead, I think, of any production that I've ever been part of. We had so much more time of tech rehearsal than I think I've ever had. We've had 2 weeks of tech, and that's a whole lot more time than I've ever had, because they really did the groundwork and set us up really well so early on that we were just prepared miles ahead before any other production I've ever been part of.
Yes, and with the help of our multiple-hatted man, Ron Schwartz, who's the TD and scenic designer and scenic builder, and one of many other hats that man wears. With the assistance of him as well and these puppets that are in this production, he got them in our hands very, very early on, just so that we could work with them and truly bring the plant to life.
So it definitely seems like with you had a lot of very important people helping you out to make sure that this production was going, very smoothly and not too difficult, I would say. What parts of the show were some of your favorites to work on in this case?
Well, I don't know if this is too much of a spoiler, but it is a musical about a man-eating plant. And I think, the most excited for getting to work with the bigger puppets that do the actual man-eating parts, just because of the theater of it all. It is such a live theater, unique live theater experience to be seeing that in person. It's a massive puppet. It's over 8 feet tall. It's amazing to see in person, just the sheer size of it, and working with it has been some of the most exciting parts of it. And doing, the big iconic songs Suddenly Seymour, Somewhere That's Green, Skid Row. It's just being a part of something that's so iconic.
For me, it was definitely getting on the stage and getting in with the scenery and everything like that. For about 3 months of the rehearsal process, we were in a studio room with taped out mapping of the floor and the stage. So once we fully got to experience our set and our stage, it truly brought everything else to life.
I was really excited to get started on character work. I think this cast has done some of the best character work I've ever seen, and we all were able to make very distinct, funny characters that are all believable in this world. And we added accents, added a lot of things that just change the way you see us, and it makes me believe that we are just really all so talented.
I love the inclusion of we all.
We all.
We all
act.
Because you're so talented.
Stop.
Yeah, and definitely I would say when it comes to, you've talked, as some of you talked about, the show can be fairly challenging with some of the songs or so. Was there anything like notable for that when it comes to just like challenges with the show?
I think Jaden has something to say about that.
I think one thing that was notable in difficulty was getting the harmonies correct in Closed for Renovation. Getting the choreography correct in Closed for Renovation. And feeling comfortable in doing Closed for Renovation. But of course, as we all know, my talented co-workers, co-actors, co-stars are just so great, and we got through it, and we managed to make it clean and really, really good to listen to. It used to make ears bleed, but now it makes ears sing along.
Yeah, and for those who don't know Closed for Renovation, because it's not in the movie version, it's one of the lesser known songs. It's such a simple song, but it's the tiniest things, like even being slightly off in pitch that throws off everybody else in the song. Like if one of you is off, everyone else is going to be thrown off. And it takes a lot of patience and trust with each other to like get to the point where it is perfect. Another thing, because again, these are some famously challenging songs. We get pretty high up there. My personal struggle was Suddenly Seymour, because that is just belting all the way through, and that wasn't something I was super comfortable with at the top of the rehearsal process. I had been taking a little break from theater before I auditioned for this, so it was like warming back up into it. Our music director, Katie, is nothing short of a miracle worker when it comes to that. It's so much patience and such a process of building up to it that I feel like leagues ahead of where I was when I started vocally, and it's just building up that, it's muscle memory, because you don't think of the voice as a muscle, but it is, and you have to train yourself to do it the same way every single time for it to become that muscle memory, for it to actually sound right. And she worked tirelessly with all of us, and she works with us every single day just to fine-tune those little things that really add up to making the songs sound great. She's just been such a godsend in that regard.
Very much so. Making sure as well with us ensemble members that we are keeping a nice supported blended sound in many of those songs to make them extra supported, such as Suddenly Seymour or Finale, where we are just hitting these beautiful, beautiful chords. And she is making sure that we are all fine-tuning those chords, and they are sounding beautifully.
Yeah, it seems like such a cliche to say, but it's just practice, practice, practice until you don't even think about it anymore, because it's when you think about it too much that you throw yourself off because you're overthinking.
Another song I think was pretty hard was Mushnik and Son.
Mm-hmm.
I was a singer throughout high school, but I never thought about doing any musical theater past that. And like these are the big leagues now. I went to callbacks, and I heard everybody sing. I was like, wow, I can't do that. So somehow, miracle, I was casted as Mushnik. When we got to Mushnik and Son, Kathleen and Jake, all they did was say a sentence. They were just like, they just said just sing. And somehow the song just sounded good. And I don't know how it went from what it sounded like before, because guys, I think some of you remember how it sounded before, and like compared to what it sounds like now, yeah, Kathleen, Jake, Bobby are all God sent.
And I would like to point out the use of a little word called can't, that we were heavily discouraged, shall we say, from using
Heavily
during the
ingrained.
rehearsal process. our dear beloved director Bobby has this little rule about we're not allowed to use the word can't because it limits us as people and as performers. And if we used the word, we would have to do a certain number of push-ups. There's a whole cast. So if one person used it, everyone paid for it. And it really, and at the top of the rehearsal process, you're like, oh, come on. Like, I have to do all this because one person said it. But it really opened up your mindset to a more positive, like, I can do this. It's just hard. There's a difference.
The biggest thing I can say with that is that in the beginning, it was very difficult for us to not do it. And I can say that it's probably been at least 2 months where I don't think I've heard that word at all from any cast member. And it truly shows how having that mentality of saying, I can do this, or I'm trying to do this, or I'm struggling at this now, but I will get better, is such a great mentality to have, and I think that has helped with our growth in the production.
Yeah, ever since those days of the push-ups, I feel so confident in myself now, and I believe I can do anything thanks to Bobby.
Love you, Bobby.
Love you, Bobby.
I guess it's an interesting parallel there because, not to spoil too much here, but it seems like that's something that like Seymour's character himself sort of was like struggling with like those types of confidence issues or so. And I guess it'd be interesting to just see what you sort of think on that because it, in a way, do you feel like Seymour like his confidence sort of boosted more so because of the plan, or was it because he was sort of seeing more of himself?
Probably more of
That's a good
himself.
question.
I mean, I feel at least it's probably more of himself because I can't say too much without giving away the story, but he comes to some realizations that feels like it's more internal.
I have to disagree with you that I think he definitely wouldn't have gotten there without the plant. And it's that kind of, because he's such a disenfranchised, disempowered person, that he has this super powerful plant that can take away problems for him, that he becomes encouraged to do these things that he wouldn't have otherwise done. Because he didn't have a support system like we do. It's just him by himself with a father figure who doesn't see him as a son figure that talks down to him. So it is a very interesting parallel. I like that a lot. I didn't think about it like that.
And I guess like just with all this talk about how you really feel like just in general the cast like that you had was a huge help, especially with like maybe getting through some of the more challenging parts with this show. Is there a particular show, if you ever were able to do another show, what would it be?
Ooh.
With this cast specifically, or just in general, like a dream show?
Well, with this cast, I would say.
Oh. I mean, there are some talented vocalists and dancers in this show.
Yep.
So there's a lot of possibilities.
Oh, yes, Jaden?
I
Hand
think
raised?
we would make an incredible Princess and the Frog.
Oh, okay.
Like the Disney Princess and the Frog? I
Yes.
agree.
I think that this cast would do phenomenal in a version of 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee.
Yes, yes,
Ooh,
yes.
And that's another big vocally challenging one, but
Yes.
it's definitely stuff that's within our wheelhouse. Maybe I'm just biased because that's one of my favorite musicals, but I think we have a really good cast for like an Into the Woods.
Yes.
Kinda.
That would be another good one.
Because that's a lot of hard songs. It takes a lot of patience.
But also, like, phenomenal character work. And, like, in this production alone, the character work is great. And any of those big productions that has that big character work, I feel like we would excel in.
Oh yeah, that's one of the highlights of this show. If I can shamelessly promote, is that we got some really good actors.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and part of that, though, too, with having great actors as well, and especially for a production, too, like Little Shop is, as you mentioned, like some of the set pieces as well can be very, I don't think elaborate's the right word, but more like it's just, in a way, I don't know, like, I think, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of a word that's not elaborate, because I don't think that's the right way.
Daunting.
it could be daunting, I guess, you know, like, or like, because like someone mentioned before, like it's a bit of a horror comedy, so certain elements may not seem as like scary until you like sort of realize like what's actually going to happen, and the what, you know, the mess that's gonna eventually potentially come with dealing with the powers that be like that. But I just was wondering, like, what would you say out of like the sets that you were working with was like a personal favorite to work on, or something for people to look forward to seeing?
Well, a wonderful thing about our set is that it's like it feels like a dollhouse to an extent. When you come in, it's a closed up storefront that opens up and it can swing open and close just like a doll's house. And that's a really fun thing because the cast is the one that open and close it. You don't ever see stage crew really on stage. They're in the wings doing the work back there, and it's cast members opening and closing it. And I think that's some of my favorite things to see is the store swinging open and close, because it really helps convey the difference in the location and everything and how the scenes are moving along.
I did like working with the scenery as well, but I think many of us were very excited to work with the puppets of all 4 of the plants. It was great. When I remember day 1 when we first got to see it, we were all just like in awe and just eating up every inch of the artistry that went into it. As a puppeteer for one of the puppets, I remember my first day experiencing it, and it was just very fun to understand the mechanics, but not only see how it looked under the lights and such.
Because not only is there, I mean, we call it Pod 4, which is the biggest of the plant, because over the course of the show, the plant gets bigger and bigger as it's fed more and more. And you could hypothetically say, along with like Seymour's ambition and greed, if you could say, because I feel like the plant is pretty symbolic, but we have 4 puppeteers, I would say, because there's Sierra, who does the puppet work for our first plant, where it's a little shaky bud growing up, and then Jimmy, our Seymour, puppeteers it in its medium stage by himself, which is, he does amazing puppet work. And it's something you don't even think about, but like just seeing it, it doesn't feel like a puppet. It feels like a live plant.
Agreed.
Chomping at people.
It is insane.
And then we have another Jaden Brown.
Yes.
Who does our second to biggest plant, which is just her top half in this plant pod. And it feels so lifelike, and it's so big. And then there's the 8-foot tall plant for the last one, which you don't think about how big that is until you actually see it. 8 feet is so tall.
It takes the person all of their muscle strength. Zach, who operates Pod 4, is using his whole body to move that puppet.
And it's
like he's like controlling a transformer in there.
Exactly.
Honestly, it's very Transformer-like.
But yeah, it's definitely the puppets. They're what you think of when you think of Little Shop. Is
Absolutely.
the plant, and that's for good reason. And Ron has done such amazing work on all 4 of the puppets. They all feel like the same plant growing up, and it's just wonderful to see every performer perform it in a very... It feels cohesive. They're 4 different performers, but it all feels like one plant, and it's amazing.
I will say something I did hear about was that originally for Little Shop of Horrors, the plan was to have this production happen like a couple of years ago or so, but
Yes.
It was right before the pandemic.
yeah.
Yeah. So it never actually got officially casted due to the pandemic. It did knock us out for that one, but we were originally going to do that, and it was originally going to be directed by, I believe, Jennifer Toohey, and with scenic design from Ken Shaw, who is now the costume designer for the show.
Again, not to be a suck-up or biased or anything, but the costumes are also very amazing.
The costumes are phenomenal.
And tell you so much about the character on first glance. And again, dare I say, maybe it's a little stroke of fate that it got pushed back so we could have this group come together to do the show later than it was
Yes.
originally intended. Because if it had gone through, none of us would have met. We wouldn't have the great show that we have right now. It would have been great, but it wouldn't have been us, you know?
Yeah.
I guess there's an exciting part, right? Like to have something eventually come out, right, and not have it be sort of lost to like time. That's not something that you often get, right?
Yeah, as somebody who was a part of that moment, as somebody who auditioned and then it got wiped out by Little Shop, it was devastating because Little Shop is one of my favorite musicals, and I thought I was going to be able to. I thought I was going to graduate without being able to be a part of it or in any way, shape, or form. And here I am in my last semester of my senior year. Bada bing, bada boom. Little Shop is here, and the cast is phenomenal, and I wouldn't expect anything less from this cast.
So, what do you think the show is going to mean to you? You know, maybe like after it's all said and done.
For me, this production is amazing. I'm happy to have this be, you know, my final stepping stone of performance here at Buffalo State. Once again, I couldn't have asked for any better of castmates, and the assistance and the direction that we have musically and from Bobby and from Jake and Kathleen, and also even the support from our crew, our cast and crew that are also running things. Gianna, who is one of our urchins, she is running hair and makeup. She is doing that phenomenally, as well as Emily and Brianna, who are dance captains, who have just put everything into this production. And I'm so happy to kind of put this on and have this be the final stepping stone for myself here.
I'll say this show means perhaps a little too much. I'm probably a little too attached to it, considering how close it is to the end. But I touched on it earlier. I had kind of given up on like being in theater. There was so much doubt I had, and this cast and crew and directing team have all like boosted me way back up into like sucking me back into theater, and it's just such a great returning point. And I've even from like outside of this show is truly, I think, amazing. Like, I think it's really good, especially for a college production. I think it feels like a mile ahead of what you expect. Even beyond that, I've made such really good friends that I feel like are going to be lifelong friends. And it's meant so much, and it's going to mean so much. It's going to be one of those things that you look back on and you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I got to do that. It's one of those great lifetime experiences to just have in memory, and just to be proud to have been attached to.
This is my first musical at Buffalo State University, and I couldn't have asked for a better show, a better cast, better directors, and better friends. Like, I wouldn't have met any of these people. I mean, I knew a couple, but I wouldn't have been so close to any of them without this show. And this show really helped me see the beauty in theater and live performance, because this is some life-changing stuff, for real. And just like Anne said, I feel like these are going to be some lifelong friends, and we will always remember this.
It means, I think, so much to me because I'm not a theater major. I'm an English writing major, and I know quite a few of our castmates aren't theater majors at all, which is how you meet a lot of your friends, is your fellow majors. And I wouldn't have had any context to meet some of these people that I consider now some of my best friends because of this production. It's just the unifying power of theater, you know?
Absolutely.
And with that has been our first ever rendition of Culture Collision on Just for the Record. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And if you want to catch Little Shop of Horrors, you have this week on the 19th and the 420 at 8 p.m. And then next week on the 25th and the 26th, also at 8 p.m. And then the final show, the 27th at 2 p.m. All these performances will be at the Warren Enters Theater at Upton Hall. Thanks for listening.